Hello, everyone. And we were just talking about city noise before we jumped on, and we're getting some now. So what are you going to do? Someone needs to get through. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Really, really appreciate it. We're, of course, very excited to have Todd Harrison on. We're going to talk through what's going on in the world of cannabis. It's always exciting, always something going on. I do want to say I know, for the better or worse. I do want to say for this one, we did want to do something a little bit special just at the top. For any of you who are on our Alpha Nooters a bunch, you'll know on Fridays we tend to do a Giving Friday aspect, something to give back, something to make a difference, do a little impact. So we wanted to kind of bump that up earlier today. I know, Todd, you went through a loss recently, and losing a pet is incredibly hard. Their best friend, their family member a lot of the time. So we wanted to kind of give something in memory of Jax. So I think there's a local dog shelter kind of nearby in Long Island called the North Shore Animal League.
That's where we got Jax.
Oh, that's so okay. Okay. Could not be more perfect. I'm so glad. So we made a donation to them. I'll post the link. How long ago did you get him? I guess because he must have been
kind of 9 years ago. I wasn't expecting you to lead with this. We were talking about what to talk about, and we went through a number of different topics. We didn't get to Jaxie. It was very sad. He was the ringleader of our house. He was the heartbeat of our home, and it was very unexpected. But 9 years we had him, so we're thankful. Thank you for that. Very kind.
Of course, of course. Well, yeah. So again, big loss. Good to have the memories. I'll pass this link around if anyone wants to take a look or join. I think also just a good reminder to, give your dog an extra pet if you have. I saw Jane posted Winston, very sweet, show them a lot of love. They show us a lot of love. So just wanted to do that at the top as well and show appreciation for you too. Because I feel like, you've been with us through some tough times as well. And we appreciate that.
This is true.
It is. All right. So then maybe let's talk cannabis, of course. We talked again, like 2 weeks ago, something like that. Stuff has happened since then. So I wanted to kind of work through some of the newer stuff. I know we have some more recent stuff. I did want to start with just talking through, because I don't think last time you were on, the Democrats had come together to make that bid for decriminalization. Just wanted to touch on that briefly.
You mean descheduling?
Descheduling. What did I say? Decriminalization? Descheduling.
Yes. Sort of read it as, politically posturing in front of the rescheduling. Yeah. And certainly expecting, that to be more prevalent after the announcement, assuming we get an announcement sooner or later. So I think that's how I read it, was that they were that was political posturing, and you're seeing the uptick in the rhetoric and the press releases, or the X's, if we can call them that. So it certainly feels like where there's smoke, there's fire. But I think that, how it was explained to me, was going to be the easier part of the process, because once that happens, this proposed rule, then you'll see lawsuits and headlines the other way saying, trying to block it. And, then it's a race against the clock to the election. But that's, as we talked about, we do believe that's one of 3 intended elements or amigos that they intended to get done into the election. So we'll see if they can get it done.
Yeah. So more posturing. Do you think, I just worry sometimes with the Democrats and how cannabis has been handled, sometimes perfect getting in the way of good, has been kind of a theme a little bit.
If you're not worried, you haven't been paying attention.
Okay, sure. Is there any worry around sort of the descheduling, not usurping, but I know it's important, and I think a lot of people would like descheduling, but also Schedule 3 does kind of get things forward and make
progress. It's a stepping stone. I think that's the, I think that's how you have to look at it. I think that's been cast in die, the Schedule 3 already. I think, famous last words, but that seems to be what everybody who's apparently close to the situation seems to be thinking. And certainly, it's a step in the right direction, but it's not, we've said it many times, it's an imperfect process because it's an imperfect solution. But it's an incremental one. And then now, you question what's the knock-on effect in terms of legislation, in terms of the ballot box in Florida, Pennsylvania, we saw yesterday, which, oh, by the way, Pennsylvania, now you got Pennsylvania, Florida, and Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We talked about the swing states into the election for a long time. Those are 3 pretty big swing states. So here we are, right? We can talk about what happened yesterday if you'd like, I think it was just another sort of educated opinion that there's stuff coming down the pipe. And not just one thing. I think there's going to be multiple headlines. I don't think if you see the White House issue a clemency, I'm picking,
something,
because Joe Biden made this promise. And if you see the White House issue this, you're going to have a certain contingency of people go, oh no, we suck again. Like that's what they were talking about. They're not mutually exclusive processes. They're interconnected, certainly, but not, they're parallel, let's just say. So we think there's going to be several headlines. Obviously, there's, we talked about the dates, the State of the Union, and 420, and yada, yada, yada. So, for a while, we talked about the steady drumbeat of headlines, and we got left holding the bag, so to speak, in December in terms of news. But, we offer that would front load 2024, which it would appear that it has. And not saying much from these levels, granted, but certainly, it's a good start in reclaiming, technical levels on the way up and demonstrating, strong performance as, at the top of trading leaderboards around the street does bring attention to the space that people may not know. And even, we were talking about this morning with somebody, like that DEA headline, that punch bowl headline, that the DEA was reviewing this. Like, yes, of course they were. We know that. That's part of the process. But, there's a lot of people that didn't know that process was happening and look at this and say, hey, holy shit, the DEA is looking at cannabis. Like, how do we play that? And then, they look and they say, oh, wow, there's really, not that many, but, there are ways. So, the number of, the comments I've gotten today, were more about how hedge funds, are seeing this as, one of the best performing sectors and underinvested after the path that we've taken. And you're sort of seeing that in terms of, the bid below, famous last words, but certainly choppy. And as we discussed last time, that composition of volume, right? Because these are the fast and loose crypto crowd type of money and the fun money. It's not the sticky, cap tables that these companies are going to have on the other side of custody, right? So we need sort of to play leapfrog to get there. So it's going to be volatile. We know that, but the ability to hold technical levels, I think, is going to, especially if we could just sort of hang here for a bit and work off some of these overbought conditions as a function of time rather than price. That's constructive, right? So far, textbook, but catalyst dependent and headline dependent.
Yep, very true. All right, perfectly summed up. I am seeing El Guapo's comment, which, hey, El Guapo, how you doing? Great to see you. You touched on it very briefly kind of at the start, and then I know you touched on it in your Substack, which was great. But this sums up the question pretty well. Can you talk a little bit about the rumor stuff? What happened? Can you break it down a little more?
So anyway, I'm on, and people are like, like, I feel like I have to pay Todd for his friendship on X subs. No, like Twitter got so venomous and toxic and the threats and it was thankless. So like all stock talk went behind the paywall because, it just felt like that was the right thing to do. It wasn't not about the money because I'll tell you this, last year, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot of visibility on the space.
Sure.
Kids got to eat. So I'm not going to apologize for trying to earn my keep.
You do a good combo of public and paid. You do a lot of free work. So,
Yeah, well, I've been writing while I'm trading for 25 years, 24 years, 25, I guess it is 25th year. It's a long time and it's a process to it. So like most of the stuff is done by the opening, like it's all planned out and it's iterative. So it's not cumulative in terms of work. What was my point? What were we talking about?
We were talking about the news
yesterday. Okay, so I was talking about this on X subs yesterday because I strap into my turret like 5:30, whatever it is, and my coffee, and I just, like I said, I got most of my work done in the morning. And usually by 10:30, I'm ready to sort of unplug for an hour and get on the Peloton and get my shits in and, trying to get to a certain target weight by May. And so, I've been trying to stay good with that, although way too many Hershey miniatures involved. Anyway, so I go down to the Peloton, and as I sit down, I get a text message from a friend of mine, and he's got a screenshot of this post from LinkedIn, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, another guy with an opinion. basically. And then I say, is he real? And he said, yes, he co-wrote Safe. And I look, I Googled him, he's real. I'm like, you know what? Sharing is caring. And I threw it up. As it was 11:19 yesterday. And I start to pedal. I was watching Narcos. I've seen it before, but A, I don't remember it that well. And B, I'm sort of in the mood for those types of genres right now. So I was all excited. I started to watch it, and then I was like, you know what? Work out later, just go upstairs. I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, we think it's coming. Like, this is consistent. Just go upstairs. You might want to pay attention. And the time it took me to walk up 2 flights of stairs, MSO was up like 6%. And so I'm like, I had the same reaction as everyone else. I'm like, was it? But that tweet, as it turns out, had like 90,000 views in the first 2 hours.
Crazy.
So, and listen, the guy's a real guy. I have no doubt that that he was well intentioned in what he wrote. I don't think he was expecting that sort of amplification.
Yeah, it's a lot all at once. Just a big rush of people coming, clamoring, and wanting answers and more information.
Yeah, I just don't think he understood the hornet's nest that was, or the journey that most of us have been on for the last however many years. But regardless, it doesn't mean that it's not good intelligence, right? Yeah. But it's nuanced, right? There's, first of all, the White House wouldn't make the announcement for the DEA. They need to depoliticize this, right? The optics. It is very political, obviously, but the last thing they want is to be leaning into the perception that's politically motivated. So, the idea that the White House would announce a DEA decision is like a non-starter to begin with. But there are multiple sort of parallel, as I said, news that's coming out, right? Like with this, we're hearing from Garland, we expect. We're going to hear from, the DEA, we expect. We're going to hear from the White House on clemency, we expect. We're going to hear more out of Congress on SAFE, we expect, right? And these are all going on. And they're all sort of tied to the same agenda politically, but they are separate processes. So, I think there's merit to the notion, if enough people tell you you're drunk, you better go lay down. I don't know if it's this week. I don't know if it's not. Nobody knows, but it's coming. And then it's going to get, spicy because, depending on how it's contextualized, do we get a Garland memo that elucidates how this all fits together? Which, again, we think this is all coming. So, where are we when they come? What is the market doing when that happens? But that's in front of us. And, as we alluded to before, Pennsylvania, Ohio, maybe Florida.
Yep.
In an election year. So what I'm saying? It just we've been talking about it. Why could this time be different? Because it's an election year. We'll see. Right. You got a lot of mechanical influences with, a lot of option flow going through. And again, the composition of volume is not what you would call, by and large, big vanilla money.
Yeah, not yet, unfortunately, but still, yeah, things still move a ton, which is wild. I think it's just interesting because I feel like we've been through the experience before where, and again, this is not just a rumor. You're right, there is the context of him being involved with SAFE and all those things like that. But it is surprising to me that even the timing aspect of things still moves stuff around. I know, again, they're smaller stocks. That's how it goes sometimes. I guess it's just, again, being ready for it, having all of those things kind of locked and loaded, and people are just waiting for that, kickoff.
Yeah, there's different strokes for different folks. I mean, are there people who were buying, it's I look at air sort of as that two-sided torque, because it's just, there's a lot of moving parts in air, right? You got Ohio, Florida, you got SAFE, you got Schedule 3, all of it. And this was one of those repricing plays. I had this conversation a lot with, with other investors who were like, hey, why aren't, GTI and TerraSend, to pick two names, having that same sort of reaction that some of these lower tier, not say lower tier, but more torque names, because, there was a point last summer, air was 65 cents. It was trading, a stone's throw from its cash level, because there was how are you going to navigate? How are you going to, navigate your way out of this? You don't have any visibility on the cash flow levers that are going to service your debt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so not only did they get that, transformative deal out of the way, last year in the midst of, or I should say, despite the environment, but now you have the catalyst start to show themselves. So of course that stock's going to have more torque because it's being repriced as an equity, as opposed to like most people I know, like who know this space, when the going got really tough last year, myself included, you lean into the GTIs and the TerraSens because you're like,
Defensive.
they're not going anywhere. Like,
Yep.
And so you're not going to you have that margin of safety that you don't have in some of these other names. But then when the tides turn, you have that repricing more in some of the more speculative names than you do some of the more, call them, blue chips. So it makes sense. And it's really about, when you talk about timing, that's sort of, there's going to come a point where there's cap raises. There's going to come a point where there's consolidation and M&A and all of that stuff. And it's like, who do you want, where do you really want to be putting your chips behind? You want to go behind those who really demonstrated through the worst of times they could do what it took. And in the best of times, they're going to do what it takes. Yeah. So it makes sense. It's just a little perverse.
Yeah, I was going to say it never hurts really to have some level of diversification too, because I think if you're putting all your eggs in one specific basket, whether that's on the blue chips or whether you're saying those higher torque names, that's also a harder bet sometimes as well. So,
So that's what happened yesterday. I think it's just part of a broader sort of. It's more of call it a symptom, of sort of what's happening. I don't think there was any agenda on this fellow's part, Adrian, to move markets. I don't think he was looking at markets or thinking about markets. I think he was, he heard something. I had high confidence from the source because the source would know, and passed it along in good sort of like.
Which is good. We appreciate that. It's a data point. Again, you can't trust the exact timing of it. Who knows? Whatever. But
you don't know.
You don't know.
And then you start to ask, like at least I did last night, like, wow, what if he really did sort of scoop the White House? Because that's probably not a good thing to do. And like even if unintentional, so it's like you don't know. It's like you start to think about gaming it and then gaming the reaction or the overreaction. Unless you're in Fed paper right now, like you don't. It's not really, like just take loose. At least for me, I should say. Look at names that maybe you don't have the right allocation to. Use the volatility to reposition, keep a little cushion, so you can.
Something coming in. What's coming in?
No, I'm just. There's so much. I feel like a freaking moth in a light bulb factory. There's a lot of information going on. I wish I could turn my thing around. You could see.
We can see both. Yeah.
No, well, there's just a lot going on here. Yeah. But my point is, like, this is like I still, and I say this as we hold these important levels, but like I do think that we're sort of in the sweet spot or the easy part of this trade, and I say that from a 2024 standpoint, as opposed to the last 5 years, because it's different conversations. But assuming we get the catalyst that we're going to get, and assuming that some of these ETFs that maybe are still below where they were trading last December on safe, let's say they re-rate, they double. I'm picking a number, or triple, and all of a sudden, like the multiples are back like in the low 20s again, and you're like, okay, this is where we topped out last cycle. It's sort of, a heads up, like don't be piggish, but then you're like, at that point, you're like, okay, like, can the animal spirit sort of take this to the next level? And then it becomes a more difficult conversation fundamentally, and that becomes more of a risk management or, picking your spots, as opposed to like, these are the names I want to own until they get to an even playing field and a normalized sort of price point. And I say that because I just think there's all of these imbalances through the year have really warped our perception about what these companies are worth, as opposed to how these companies' stocks are trading.
Yeah, no, that's really true. I can't wait till we get to that quandary that I'm excited for. I feel like now currently has been around the FOMO of getting in versus is this time different? Is
Okay,
this, I feel
I
like
need
that's
to get in. Holy shit, I can't believe I own
yeah,
these. I need to get in. Holy shit, I
exactly.
can't believe I
How
own
did I
these.
not buy them middle or yeah, exactly. It's a constant back and forth.
Well, we said it for a long time. The buyers are higher, and it was sounded silly all the way down. But like as I said
Yeah.
before, like as you see these ETF leaderboards going around, and like you have these cannabis ETFs up top. It's like I didn't know that was a thing, and that's like free advertising for the sector.
Yeah.
And it goes, again, like this has been such a long and daunting bear market. It was
Yes.
1,100 and something days. It's like the just the it's not it's almost a foreign concept that you could see sort of what happened unwind the other way, right? All the mechanical forces, all of the legislative disappointments, all of the state level disappointments. I was having this conversation this morning with a client actually, and we were talking about how he thought that this was a technical trade right now. And I said, maybe. I said, but you do have Pennsylvania, you do have Ohio, you maybe have Florida. And let's not forget New York, by the way, which all of a sudden is back in town again, my hometown here. Not
Yeah.
that it's going to necessarily like be a big percentage of some of these companies mix initially, but it's New York. And like that vertical seed to sale integration in the New York State
Hmm.
is worth something.
Huge, as you New Yorkers say, I guess.
And
Whatever.
I think it is over time, but you need to get, the regulatory. And that was the other part of the conversation. Like, well, doesn't, Schedule 1 they don't enforce. How are they enforcing Schedule 3? And I said, well, it's not even about the schedule. Look in New York, they weren't waiting for rescheduling to take advantage of the loopholes. But I'll tell you who is no longer going to let that happen is, the governor who wants the tax revenue. And
Yeah.
that's, and then in the next cycle, if we can just look forward, you're going to have all this capacity come online. Prices are going to fall. Everyone's going to say, holy shit, here comes the price depression again. But the illicit market right now is 3 times the size of the legal market. And the only thing holding us back is price, right?
Mhm.
Because you have two things that weigh the same or cost the same, I should say. And one is tested and doesn't have pesticides or vitamin E acetate, and one, doesn't. You're going to go with the legal and safe product every time.
Yeah.
And that's 3 times the size of the legal market, even if it's half the price point. So, it's we'll see.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. Also, Mark is right. Texas too I know they're not making huge progress yet, but I think they are seeing in those little individual cities trying to make some progress, which it's a big state as well. I know it's, not the main ones we've been focusing on, but I think it is still important and hopefully we see some progress.
It's all part of it. Yeah, but that goes back to what's the knock-on effect for Schedule 3,
True.
right? Because then now you have, and you see it like Pennsylvania was talking about, all their neighbor, and we talked about this like 5 years ago.
I know.
How there's going to be this like FOMO amongst like New York's not going to want New Jersey to be the first one in, and like remember that conversation?
Mhm.
And so like they see what the numbers that Illinois is putting up, and the numbers that Missouri's putting up, and what Michigan's putting up, and what Maryland's putting up.
Yeah.
There's a way to do this, and the way is to leverage your medical framework into an adult use framework because it's got the capacity, it's got the infrastructure, yada yada yada
Yeah.
yada. But anyway,
I feel like
so
we gotta find that old clip of you saying the same thing that still applies and overlay that
unless
vintage
you're going to
filter.
take all the clips
It's
of
just
everything I've said wrong and put
no,
that
no,
in
no,
the
no.
next,
I was just gonna say it's just like
that would
the
be longer.
Twitter, the X thing that you put out of the 1960s TV show where I feel like it's like the same same story, it still holds
Wasn't
true.
it? I
It
put
was
it on my.
crazy. Well, it reminded me there's also I think, one of the Beatles, I feel like there's a interview with him talking about cannabis and, "Oh, it's not a big deal too." I gotta find that as well, but no, it's very precedent, and
Well,
wild.
we're doing, I don't want to kind of jump the shark here, but, been very busy with Weldon working on a few projects.
Yeah.
Shout out to PharmaCann that, flipped the switch and like, it's been terrific as a partner. But we're doing some things coming up. There's some trips coming up, which I'll talk about at the time. There's an online a virtual symposium that we're pulling together with a bunch of
Mm.
big names, and we'll leave that there. But that's coming up. And what else? There's a few campaigns. It's going to be an active spring, I think.
Mhm.
I don't have like that's not like I'm not alluding to like
Something.
oh that means that the DA, and I have no fucking idea when
Of
whether
course.
he is going to. Nobody does.
Yep.
But well, that's not true. Some people do,
Yes.
but they're
There are
usually
some.
out of our purview until
Yes.
it's too late. But like I said, there was a time where when you saw the rug get pulled, if that's what happened, because I don't think that the I don't think that the retort of an anonymous source from the White House, I don't think that that's necessarily like I don't think that's as credible as the initial report, right? Because this
Right.
guy's a real guy, and you presumably doesn't put something like that out there just for shits and giggles.
Mhm.
But that being said, you don't know what the reaction was, and you don't know sort of the timing of it all. But it's the process is the process, and I think as we move through the spring, and that we're going to be happy that there's a staccato of headlines, that it's not like one and done where you're like, oh, like that just came, okay, let's price it in, let's fade it, and now let's take them back down, because there's going to be another headline, we think. Some of them
Mhm.
are going to be sexy, some of them are going to be overdue, like
Mhm.
and the criminal justice stuff. It's like I was reading, and I don't really spend too much time on X, or try not to, because it's
Can be crazy sometimes.
be
That's
crazy
yeah.
sometimes.
That's
Yep.
fair.
Um, but it was just like, like it's like let's not shit on criminal justice reform because it doesn't move your P&L. That's
Yeah.
like bad form. Anyway, so that's that.
I think the good news is though, with a lot of the stuff, with the progress just being made, I know there you have to put extra special effort into certain parts of it. And again, with Mission Green, that's great that you're making that progress and doing that work. But it does, kind of generally trend everything positive, both on the social, justice side of things as well
Yeah,
as
but it goes back to, I mean, like you could talk about politics. I know we're bumping up soon, but
yeah, that's okay.
we made a comment. You cut off both red zones, like it's a much better world, right? And I think the same could be said for the cannabis agendas.
Mhm.
This is not, and I saw this firsthand, like just watching, like at the PharmaCann kind of event. There's a lot of, at first you're like, can I trust these guys? And
Mhm.
and then you're like smoking joint, and you're like,
It's fine.
wow, this is really good weed. Like, how much can you go in for? Damn,
Mhm.
okay, let's, and like, and it's just building, that bridge one joint at a time.
Yeah. I feel like you're zipping off zingers. You got that, and you have the staccato of headlines. Anne loves it. It's great.
What is it
Good.
now? A staccato.
Your
Is
staccato of
that even a
headlines.
word? I don't know
It
if I
is,
say
yeah,
that
it's
right.
musical. It's good. It's good. It's a wide range. All right. Well, then I guess that's a ton on the US side, which I know is a big focus. I did want to touch very briefly on international. I know lots going on in Europe in general. Some weird stuff. I would love to get your take on the what is it? Not Thailand. Thailand. Thailand, right? They're kind of rolling stuff back, which is surprising and interesting. I don't know. Would love to just hear a quick, brief touch on for the international side of things as well, because I know there's stuff going on.
I mean, I think it's, we were talking about this. I know, like, Village Farms has, I know Curaleaf just entered into Poland, and
Delicious.
you have almost a better line of sight on that stuff. Just although from a timing standpoint, it's difficult, but I don't think you can really sleep on it because this is a global
Mhm.
dynamic. And I do think that those are seeds that'll pay off for the right players. And I know, like, saying that after what we saw in Canada early, but timing is everything.
Mhm.
And this is a real market. I mean, we didn't even talk about the replacement, kind of trends, and the dry January, and
Oh, yeah.
all of that stuff. And it's, like, this is not like just something that, we're trying to get people to understand, right?
It's not a
It's,
phase. It's yeah, it's
right. This
no,
is
yeah.
part, this is a lifestyle. It's a way of, it's a healthier way. Like I kind of, I say this as a hypocrite because since Jaxie died, I have had a few dances with Kim Crawford,
Mhm, fair enough.
in memories.
Totally.
But not drinking to me is like, it's a better way to be. It's a
Mhm,
better way to feel.
mhm.
And cannabis to me is just part of that, that regimen. It just you have to know what you're doing, and you have to be responsible, like
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah, I
right?
was gonna say moderation in all things, sugar, coffee, caffeine, I guess, really more than anything else. Yeah, alcohol or cannabis. But cannabis, I do think I'm really, really excited. We were talking about this with Dan yesterday. Excited to see the numbers coming out because it seems like more and more people are doing that trend and they're finding those substitutions in things like cannabis or even just being sober, which is also, hopefully a
Yeah,
healthier option for
I
people.
mean, we talk names. I mean, we talked earlier, I think about Air, the Torque, and now the Warrant out of the way.
Mhm.
I saw Dan added
Oh, yeah.
finally some Ascend, to much to the delight of
Oh,
the
that's true.
Twitterati.
I know. Yep.
But that's another one. But
Yep.
Columbia Care, sorry, Cannabis. Cleaned up 33. I think it was the Trina Ridge overhang, cleaned up 33 million yesterday late.
Mhm.
24 on a cross. That's probably leaking out on the way up, but it's up 20% and probably, has room to just get back to let's see, cannabis is up 3.7% year to date, as opposed to, let's see, True Leaves up 120%. Ascend's up 62%, Green Thumb 22,
Good.
Glasshouse 45, Verano 47.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
C21 60,
Yeah.
Cresco 75. I mean, know what you own and understand you're going to have chances to reposition along the way.
Yeah.
And and the other thing I would just note real quick before we go is,
Mhm.
this isn't a 2024 story necessarily. Like, this started last summer, and it's been that double bottom retest on lower volume that we talked about. That was fun.
Mhm.
But a lot of these stocks have started to demonstrate the type of technical, you know, traits that you want to see across horizons, right? And the weekly, even the monthlies are starting to shape up. And that's all, that's all part of, that's one of the, four primary metrics I think that drive stocks. The other one is structural, and
Mhm.
that's also on the cusp of changing. Fundamental is another one. And I think with the states, we can make a case there. And then psychology being the fourth. And you could argue that psychology, maybe a little too fast, has flipped, but that's, you can't blame, some of the people who suck it out for feeling good.
Mhm.
But I also think there is something to be said for acting like we belong here and deserve these types of gains, and tossing the ball back to the mound and jogging to the dugout and getting back, to the next inning.
Yep, that is true. All right, that perfectly wraps it up. I did unfortunately see one question that I wanted to just float your way before we wrap up fully from To Profit to Puffs. They were asking about Village Farms and what you think, sort of about the runway. I know that can tie into other cannabis companies as well, but just curious. On
Yeah, no, I mean, we love Village, we love the management. I know, they, like everybody in Canada, have been struggling with a lot of the dynamics. I think there is this. I read today that they're targeting the spring to revisit some of the regulatory, sort of handcuffs that's been put on the Canadian industry. Nothing, village specific jumps out in terms of, risk factors. I do think that their footprint across the globe and, speaks to the opportunity ahead, which you got to sort of, get there, go through it to get through it. And I think
Mhm.
everybody in Canada is trying to go through it right now.
We're trying to go through it to get through it in the US too as well, differently, but also the same thing.
Yeah,
Totally get it.
100%.
All right.
100%.
Well, Todd, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate you sitting down with us. Everyone, thanks for joining. Really appreciate you being here as well. And we'll check in with you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at advisorshares.com.